Now, I want to talk about some of the attitudes that you will have to do your best at university when you're studying philosophy. And it's important to get your attitudes right because apart from anything else, you will be baffled most of the time. This is how you will feel much of the time at university. If you're not baffled most of the time, we're doing our part wrong because we're supposed to push you. We're supposed to get you into a state of more or less perpetual bafflement. That's part of the program. That's part of how higher education works. But of course, being baffled can be a bit demoralizing. And if you don't understand that bafflement is normal, and you might think it's just you. Okay. So what do you do? How do you deal with that? Well, the answer is to try and get your brain into a playful condition, right? Your brain works best when it's playing with other people or when it thinks it's playing. If you can fool it into thinking that it's doing something that you're not really serious about, right? So here are some very important people who are playing Lego. Actually, what they're doing is thinking about strategic questions to do with their business, but they're doing it by playing Lego. They've translated the business question into a Lego building task, and now their brains think they're just playing Lego, right? So their brains then think, oh, this is great, and off they go thinking freely and creatively, and hopefully the problems get solved. So you need to do that. That's what you need to do, is persuade your brain that you're just playing. So what is the definition of play? Well, there are 5 elements really. One is that play is self-chosen and self-directed, right? That you've decided to do this, right? Second, the means are more important than the ends. If kids play make-believe, there is no end result. Or even if you play football after work, it doesn't really matter who. I mean, you play to win, but it doesn't really matter who wins. The main thing is the activity itself. That's what makes it playful. The rules aren't dictated by physical necessity. They come from the minds of the players, or perhaps they're inherited in the case of football. But the point is, there's nothing about your situation that makes you play those rules. You choose them, right? And play has to be kind of non-literal or mentally removed in some way from the serious business of life. So if you're fantasizing about playing at Wembley, fine, doesn't matter. Or if children are playing, let's pretend. Again, it's not literal. It's not. They're not seeking truth, right? And most important, you have to be in an alert but non-stressed frame of mind. Now, that's difficult because a lot of student life is the very opposite. A lot of student life is directed from external goads or external requirements. Somebody says you have to write this essay, you have to sit this exam, you have to do these course requirements rather than choosing it yourself. The end result is important, right? Your degree outcome. So education can seem like an activity that's the very opposite of play because it's the end result rather than the activity itself that seems to be important. And the rules seem to come from elsewhere, right? Somebody else imposes the rules on you. Rules about referencing, rules about writing, whatever it is. And you aren't supposed to be whimsical or fantastical, right? You're supposed to be seriously aiming at the truth and not engaged in, fantasy, right? You're meant to be objective. And it's difficult to maintain that condition of being both alert but unstressed, because either somebody talks to you for too long, so you become bored and you stop being alert, or you're stressed, right, because you've got an exam to do or an assessment of some other sort. So you need to kind of get a grip on this and find ways to persuade your brain that actually you're just playing. And the easiest way to do this is to study with other people, because if you're collaborating with somebody else, You know, if you've got study buddies, you must have study buddies. If you've got study buddies, you can kind of work together and work will turn into play. So here is my absolute favourite slide. Here are two philosophy students thinking about the token theory of identity. Seriously, that's what they're doing. They're doing it together, and they're so absorbed in what they're doing that they've forgotten why they started doing it. They're just doing what they're doing. And there's no teacher present, there's no adult, there's no lecturer. They're not looking up for guidance to somebody else, they're looking down into the pond to find out what's there, right? That's what education is like when it's really going well. When you're doing it for its own sake, when you're absorbed in what you're doing, when you're doing it with somebody else, and you've achieved that independence I talked about earlier. These two people are studying independently. Nobody is telling them what to look at or what to look for. And the last thing I want to say is that you need to think of study as a joyful activity, but it's the kind of strenuous joyful activity like mountaineering or parenthood. So, you know, if you were, if this mountaineer got a helicopter to the top of the mountain, they get the same view, but they wouldn't get the same satisfaction, right? Same way, if you just, you know, if you made friends with somebody who's 18, that would be very good. I recommend you do it, but it's not the same as raising somebody from childhood to adulthood. You don't get the same satisfaction. And of course, there are ways in which both these activities can go terribly wrong. And so you have to take them seriously. You have to work at them. And sometimes there'll be, you know, dark nights of despair and moments of terror and moments when you think, I'm not sure I can do this. But if you push through, you will eventually get to the kind of satisfaction you can only get by doing something difficult, sticking with it, and showing stamina. And it's that requirement for stamina that is the other reason why you need study buddies. You need somebody else who's going through it with you, and you can share the joys and sorrows as you go. That person won't be a member of academic staff. That person will be another student. All right, well, I hope this is in some way useful, and I hope to see you soon.